Hello, everybody. It's John Krebs with Compass Games. We're joined with Jon Southard, the designer of Grant, the Western Campaign of 1862. This is part one of our ongoing discussion with Jon Southard, and we look forward to discussing more about the game with him. So, John, what I want to do first, just introduce you to everybody, just for those that maybe very few that don't know your background that well with game designs, because you've done some great game designs. Can you tell us a little bit about your background with the hobby, and especially with war game design, some of the games you've done?
Oh, well, sure. I've been playing games since about 1970. My first published design was Grant Moves South, which we're going to talk about in a moment. But I'm best known, I think, for my Pacific War games, Pacific War solitaire games. The most recent being Carrier Battle Philippine Sea from Compass, and then earlier games Tokyo Express and Carrier from Victory Games.
Great. Well, yeah, with that, if anybody hasn't heard of those games, definitely please check them out because they're fantastic games. You can simply go to BoardGameGeek, for example, look up Jon Southard as a designer, and you'll see all his published titles there. So that's a great way to learn more about Jon's titles. So, yes, what we're going to be talking about today, which I want to spend some time on just for a moment, is, and actually we have a Kickstarter going on right now. So here we have Grant, the Western Campaign of 1862. You can see the Kickstarter at this time is currently live. Some of you might be watching this after the Kickstarter has concluded, but then of course the game will be available direct from the Compass Games website. But what I want to do first actually is share again the roots you mentioned. John, can you share a little bit with us the inspiration behind this game, which if we go again to Board Game Geek, I've got an image here of Grant Moves South. So can you take us through a time warp of when this was done and how this first design came about?
Sure. Well, this was done back in the early 80s when I was trying to get into game design and was lucky enough to meet my now lifetime friend and mentor, Jack Green of Quarterdeck Games, who gave me some advice. I was very interested in the Civil War, always had been, and we got to talking about possible topics, and this one came to the top of the list. He said, "Why don't you try to do this?" And so I did under his tutelage, and it actually got nominated for a Charles Roberts Award way back when. So I was very pleased by that. But of course, it's been many years since then. It's been almost 40 years. Times have changed, and so have I. The art of game design has advanced. My understanding and skills have advanced. So I was very pleased that Compass wanted me to take another whack at it. It's been a great privilege to do that.
Yeah, and I want to provide everybody just sort of a bird's eye view here of the cover for the game. So here we have the cover of Grant. So again, the Western Campaign of 1862. Again, coming originally inspired by Grant Moves South, which you just provided. Thanks for providing that background about the original design. What I also want to share here is I think the back of the box is always helpful. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to show the back of the box, but can you give an elevator pitch about what the game's about? Again, just to
Sure.
reintroduce
So
it.
the subject of the game is the Tennessee campaign of 1862, starting at the Battle of Fort Donelson and ending at the Battle of Shiloh. And what makes this campaign uniquely interesting for the Civil War is the importance of the rivers. The theater of war is huge. We'll talk about that. The entire eastern theater of the Civil War comfortably fits into a little area in the upper right corner of this map. So the scale of this is very different from the scale of the Eastern campaigns. And it was fought in February and March when there's a lot of rain. So a lot of the movement was actually done by river. And it was Grant's ability to use those rivers and use the steamers and use the naval gunboats and so on that marked him out for the first time as a great general and made this campaign so interesting. And so in most Civil War campaigns, the boats are just a way to get somewhere. And then after that, it's all marching. Not so here. You have this naval and land interplay, which is really interesting. You also obviously have the prospect of really decisive things happening. This was a hugely important campaign. The initial victory at Fort Donelson, the victory for the Union at Shiloh, which could easily have been a disastrous defeat, the starting of the opening of the Mississippi, and also what people don't realize, but what this campaign reveals is, or this game reveals, is chances for the Confederates to attack too. One of the important things about this game is that it rewards the Confederates early on if they can take and hold locations in Kentucky. They don't have to hold them to the end of the game. They just have to go there and hold them. So these raids into Kentucky territory are very important because Kentucky had still been trying to maintain neutrality. There were a lot of Kentuckians, including my own great-grandfather, who
Oh,
thought Kentucky should be
yeah.
fighting on the southern side. My great-grandfather was a trooper in Morgan's Raiders.
Was that an
So
inspiration for you, having some family going
oh,
back?
well, it's all oh, sure. I mean, growing up and hearing my mother tell the Civil War stories and
Yeah.
hearing my
Wow.
grandfather talk about our family history and so on, absolutely. Yeah, my mom took me to Civil War battlefields when I was 8 years old. So
That's
yeah,
amazing.
absolutely. That was a root of the interest. But although I'm solidly on the Union side, which I think disappointed my grandfather. He was, unreconstructed Confederate, but God rest his soul, he's long gone,
Right.
But you see me wearing Union blue.
Well, this is great. I think again, this is our first segment that we're covering. I think this was a great introduction to you again, just to make sure everybody gets to know a little bit more about you and your background and the games you've done and where they can find more about your designs, obviously. And we've done a brief introduction, obviously, of Grant. What we're going to do in our next installment, which will be coming up for viewing soon, we'll be covering what inspired you to do a new edition, completely new design, new edition of Grant. So that's going to be our focus for our next segment that we'll be producing. So for now, we're going to close our first segment. I want to thank you, John, for joining us, and I look forward to starting segment 2 with you shortly. Thank you.